Just going to say, Roy, you're an ex-cop and you're an alcoholic.
That's absolutely right, and guilty on both counts.
No, but it does create a consciousness.
People from all different cultural backgrounds can meet.
But my journey along the alcoholic route had started, albeit I didn't realise it. If you don't take the first drink, you can't get drunk.
Welcome to Peckham Podcast. I've got a man from Liverpool. He's going to talk to us about many things, his own story and broader tales too. My guest, Roy, thank you very much for coming and accepting this invitation. Obviously, as people will hear, you're not from Peckham, but your story is relevant to all of us. Tell us where you're from.
Well, I mean, I was born in Wallasey on the other side of the Mersey, but brought up in and around Liverpool till about 14, 15, and then moved out to Wigan and that area of Lancashire, where I stayed until I moved down to London on the 28th of April 1980.
Right.
I don't know why that date's significant, but it sticks in my mind.
You've been a policeman, but stuff also happened, so...
Yeah, I mean, I do you want me to start the police career, or do you want me to,
All right, I'm just going to say, Roy, you're an ex-cop and you're an alcoholic.
That's absolutely right, and guilty on both counts. I was brought up by two wonderful people. You know, people tell horror stories about their upbringing and abuse, and nothing of that sort. Myself and my sister, were brought up by my mum and dad, who are no longer with us, on the outskirts of Liverpool, a place called Kirby. And, you know, we were well looked after. We never wanted for anything. And all the way through my life, I always felt safe and secure with both of them, you know. And they really did look after us well. And also instilled a very gentle discipline, but ethics, shall we say. You know, my dad was very much of the ilk that you didn't go into a pub unless you could buy a drink yourself. You know.
Well, that's ethical, yeah.
Yeah, and
I thought you were going to talk about church for a second.
No. That was never on his list of things to do. And also, if somebody offers to buy you a drink, you never accept it unless you've got the money to buy one back. That kind of thing. It was. I used to call it pub ethics. And his philosophy in life was, you know, if a man works hard, and I know that's a sexist statement these days, but this is the way he used to think. If a man works hard all week, he's entitled to a couple of drinks when he's finished work. And that's what used to happen. My mum, in the main, was at home and had part-time work. And life was quite happy. I joined the police when I was 18 in Wigan.
Because...
there was a police officer lived opposite. He was a dog handler in the British Transport Police, and I started to spend time with him. And of course, he used to tell me the stories of what went on. He went off into the centre of Liverpool with the dog and came back the next day and would go for a walk with the dog, and he used to tell me all the things. Whether they happened or whether they didn't, I have no idea. But it certainly sort of wet my whistle for wanting to join, and that's what I did. And I was posted to the outskirts of Liverpool, a place called Halewood, where the car plant is. And that's where I spent my first 2.5 years. It was Lancashire Constabulary then, in those days. And I think back fondly to those days. But you know, I moved into the city centre, and people say to me, oh, the police is a drinking culture, isn't it? Well, not necessarily, but I gravitated towards the people that did, and I loved to be in their company. But it wasn't just at work, it was at home. You know, I drank with people who drank like me. And when I look back, my drinking in the early days wasn't normal, wasn't what other people my age did. And I can see that now, but I couldn't see it at the time. And I sort of, drinking wasn't a problem. It didn't seem to be a problem. I wasn't getting any difficulty. My life was progressing quite well. But my journey along the alcoholic route had started, albeit I didn't realise it. I mean, there was a point fairly early on where I started drinking excessively.
Stress?
No, I think it was in a social setting, but once I'd started, unlike other people who used to stop and go home, I used to stay right the way through. And I found myself in a situation where having mild withdrawals, but my doctor put it down to anxiety. I think they used to call it debility in those days, and he gave me some tablets I used to take. And the one thing I used to know in those days was that if I had 3 or 4 pints, everything was back to normal again. Everything was back to normal again. And I never, ever associated those 3 or 4 drinks as being the problem. I always saw them as being the solution and thinking, well, if I've had those 3 or 4 pints, there can't be that much wrong with me if that puts it right. And looking back now from this end of the scope, if you like, that was the start of the problem. It was the fact that my body was starting to rely on alcohol as a medication, as a support, and getting me through difficult times.
And I know because of where we met, and I should just explain that I met Roy at New Scotland Yard, where a police project entitled ADDA, which is devoted to addiction and the realm of issues that obtain to addiction. And you, with 3 other people,
That's
regaled a room full of folk who'd come from different walks of life, but all with an interest in maintaining community relations with the police. And you were one of the speakers and made an impression on me. So you decided this. I'm jumping forward in the timeline, but we can go back along it. But it's interesting to hear you starting off and how things almost invisibly changed gear and crept up on you and took over.
Yes.
Could you say, despite your... Were you happy as a police officer?
Yes. Yeah, very. It was what I wanted to do. It's what I enjoyed doing. And I got promoted fairly quickly. I passed the exam in the right place at the right time. And I got promoted. I was probably about 24 when I got promoted, which was... It's not unusual these days, but it perhaps was a little bit more so then.
To what rank?
Sergeant.
Right.
And I stayed in that rank until I transferred down to the Met on April.
So uniform sergeant, not
Yes.
a detective sergeant.
No, uniform.
Yeah.
It was uniform. Yeah, it's funny you talk about that day at New Scotland Yard. That'll be one of those days that will stick in my mind for a long, long time, because as you may recall, there was a very special person in that room.
Yeah, I do. Writing your eyeline.
Absolutely. That was for the purpose of people listening, it was my daughter. And of course she'd lived through all those years, and some of them not very pleasant years of need, of want, of just wanting me to get better and be a real dad, which I wasn't capable for a long time. And have her sat at the back. She asked me about a day or so before, because she's a police officer herself, and when she realised it was Project Adder, she said, "Do you mind if I come along?" And she's very astute, and she picked up the hesitancy in my voice. It was sort of, I was sort of a bit caught in the headlights. And I thought, yeah, do you know what? I would like her to be there. And then she said, "Look, if it's going to put you under unnecessary stress, I'll leave it." And I said, "No, I'd like you to be there." And she came, and she was in my line of sight. And every time, when I was talking, because, you know, I was talking just off the cuff. I didn't have a script or anything. And I could just see her at the back smiling and nodding. And I thought, I'm getting this right. And she was my sort of sounding board, if you like. And sort of take it back nearly 15 years, I was in a treatment centre in Wiltshire called Cloud's House. Fantastic place. And she came...
Is that residential?
Yes, yeah, fully residential. And she came there, and my son didn't want to do it, which is fine, because it was a choice. And she was a little bit tricked anyway. She came to visit me, and she brought my new grandson up to see me. And the counsellor sort of took us into a room. And the idea of this session was for me to sit on my hands and shut up and listen. And that was very cathartic as well, because there were things I didn't want to listen to, or things I didn't even remember. that she was able to get off her chest.
Was she, because she had made a split from you, I believe. Is that right?
She made a split. She was there for me, but really with what she had going on in her life. I mean, she got Max, who's my other grandson, who was approaching 4, and she was pregnant with Ethan, and so she had all that going on. Plus, she was working full time, and then she got this rampant idiot running around in her life, getting drunk and making all kinds of ridiculous decisions.
Right.
And I mean, cards on the table. I was not easy to live with at all. And when I reflect back, I think how, I love my family with all my heart. How I could behave in that way, I wasn't sort of violent or aggressive. I was just a waste of space, basically. All I lived for was drinking. Drinking, sleeping.
And work would be a necessary evil from time to time?
From time to time, but there were long periods of time when I couldn't. And when I could, you see, quite early on, probably when I was about 40, I reached the point where I either drank or I worked, and I couldn't do both. Mm-hmm. I might be able to do both for a month, 2 months, and then the drinking would gradually creep up, and the work would creep down, and eventually I'd have to walk away, or have it suggested to me that I do walk away.
Is this you in the Met by now?
No, I was out of the Met by then. I came out of the Met at the age of 39. Right. And there's a lot of emotion attached with that. I mean, I suppose there's not a day goes by when I don't think about my police service. And I've got the linkage with my daughter because she took her inspector's exam yesterday. And during the run into that, I mean, I'm really proud and privileged the fact that she asked my opinion on things. Some of the legislation hasn't changed, and she used me as a sounding board. And although lots of legislation has, the basic principles are there. And also, I think the person I am these days, I'm able to give encouragement and maybe some, not so much advice. I never start off any kind of conversation with my kids with what you need to do. I'll always sort of caveat it with, if it were me, thinking about if I was in your position, I might think of blah, blah, blah. And that's how I suppose it's the same as, but it just doesn't come across as what you need to do, the finger being pointed at. And, so having been involved in that. Now, as I say, every day I can be walking through central London and I'll see something, I'll see a police car, I'll see a carrier or something or other, and it takes me back to those days. Now, I'm not saying it's the same for everybody, but I suppose I've got this constant connection with my daughter, with her husband, who's an inspector out in sort of Tottenham, Edmonton way. And so I've never actually lost that connection. And we can have conversations about what's going on, about policing in London and one thing and another, because that's very close to everyone's heart. So when I walked out of the back gates of Harlesden Police Station in December of 1992, and I thought that was all the stresses and the strains were going to be gone. It was the job that caused all the problems. If I didn't have all these things, and it wasn't. The thing that caused all the problems was my drinking. And when I drank, you know the old phrase, if you don't take the first drink, you can't get drunk. That was a principle that I couldn't get for many years. Long after I left the job, I couldn't get that principle. Surely, just 2 or 3 is fine. And we know medically, mentally, whatever way you want to look at it, that research tells us that one drink, that's the one that sets the hairs running. And as a suffering alcoholic or an alcoholic in recovery these days, thank goodness, one drink will cause it all to fall apart. And there's a guy called Professor Andrew Huberman. He does podcasts on YouTube, the Huberman Lab, and he's professor of ophthalmology and neurology or neuroscience at Stanford. And he was talking about neural pathways with addictions. And the 2 substances they were looking at, one was cocaine and the other one was alcohol. And he said, unlike a lot of addictive behaviours, we have these neural pathways, and you know this phrase, neurons that fire together, wire together. And we get these neural pathways. There are certain things that if we don't do them for a while, then they just disappear, they get overwritten. But with alcohol and cocaine, I've never ever taken cocaine, so I don't know, but I certainly know about alcohol, is that you can not drink alcohol for maybe 20, 30 years. And the minute you do, within a very, very short space of time, we're maybe talking about a day, a couple of days, you're right back where you were. Those neural pathways fire up, and that addiction is back with vengeance.
I think it was you I heard the phrase from, one's too many and ten's not enough.
I think it was Rachel who mentioned that, but yeah,
was
once too
Yeah.
many and 100's not enough. I mean, I was listening to a guy the other week, and he was talking about, he went out at 7:30 at night, and he was craving a drink more at 2 o'clock in the morning than he was at 7:30 at night. And all his friends were falling by the wayside. Oh, I'm going home, I've had enough. And he said, I wanted more. My body wanted more. And I've heard this guy speak several times, and his story never ever varies.
Yeah, it's a serious thing, and those of us who are lucky enough to be social drinkers, you know, 1 or 2, 3 on a rare day,
Yeah.
I feel odd because I like a regular drink. I have a little something every day.
Why should you feel odd? I mean, the fact of the matter is
It's just sitting here and seeing you talk, you know, because you're very sincere in how you're looking back at yourself and describing things. And I think, am I sailing close to the wind?
No. Well, I'm saying no. It's not for me to judge anybody, but in my experience, is anything to go by, you know. And I know a lot of alcoholics. If we could get 2 or 3 drinks once, you know, 2 or 3 times a week, life would be fantastic. But that's just not going to happen. Absolutely not going to happen. And the funny thing is, talking about this with sort of friends who are in AA, if doctors came up with a pill that meant we could do that, there aren't that many of us that would. On the off chance that it didn't work. Because if it didn't work, we'd be right back there again. And none of us wants to go back there. I mean, obviously, whilst I was travelling here today, I was reviewing where the conversation might go. And, you know, it's to pick up, you know, a drink of any kind now would destroy the life that I've got. If this magic pill were there, I'm not a gambling man. So I just couldn't take it. I really couldn't. Because it's not just me either, you know. If it were just me, maybe I could have a throw of the dice, but I doubt it. But I've got 2 wonderful grandsons. I've got my daughter, my son, my son-in-law, all there immediately. I've got my sister in Spain, and you know, in spite of the life that I led years ago, they all still love me, and it will be a huge insult to them. I think insult's probably too light a word, but you know, it'd just be awful for them, having invested in me the way they have, with caring for me, with loving me, with being there for me to go out and pick a drink up and say, I thought I'd just give it a try. Because in the light of all the evidence out there, it's going to fail. It is absolutely going to fail.
Yeah. Well, I know that today is special and we can raise our teacups to you because it's a special anniversary for you. Do you want to just tell us?
Yeah, today is 15 years ago that I had my last drink. And it's sort of quite coincidental that, you know, you invited me here today, and today is the 15th anniversary. And it's a quiet, you know, it's not a party, it's not a, you know, text and well done and what have you, because it's the most important day is 15 years and 1 day.
Yeah. You told us a story about John Conte, the former boxer.
Yeah, John was an amazing guy. You know, he's in the fellowship and he does an awful lot for people in recovery. I mean, he writes about his recovery and has done for a long time. And he used to say to me, why I couldn't get it, it's one of the most simple things that's ever been said to me. He said, all I have to do is get my head on the pillow tonight, not having had a drink. I just have to remember I'm not going to drink today. And he said, and when I wake up tomorrow, because that was my next question, yeah, but what about tomorrow and what about the day after? He said, when I wake up, it's today again. And all I've got to do is not drink today. And he said, and I approach, my life is in 24-hour segments. And when I wake up in the morning, I'm not going to drink today. And that works. That works.
Yeah, people who get on interesting paths like meditation, they try to get you to be present, don't they? There's a sort of vocabulary to it.
Absolutely.
Being in the now, so being here.
Being in the now. And the funny thing is, somebody once said to me, and it made me smile, and it's right, the minute you realise you're not present, you are. Yeah. Once you identify that your mind's wandering, you've pulled it back to where it needs to be.
Yeah, that's good.
I mean, I do things like, if my mind is all over the place when I'm driving, I go back to when I did my driving courses in the police. We used to have to do a commentary of what you're seeing as you're driving, junctions, people, schools, garages, what have you, speed, looking in your mirror, looking behind, all of those things. And so you verbalise it, and that brings you right back into the moment. That's just my little thing that I do.
Interesting. So tell us how you got to AA, because that, I imagine, represented stepping through an invisible door.
AA was a very, very slow burner for me. I went to my first AA meeting whilst I was still serving in the police, and it was in Gants Hill, near Ilford. And I went there one evening. Now, I think it might have been at the suggestion of a GP, because I was going to see my doctor about my drinking, and I think it was at the GP's suggestion, but I honestly can't remember. But I went into this meeting, and I heard everything that I needed to hear in that meeting for me to stop drinking that day. There was a guy, he was talking, the main chair at the meeting, was talking about having a bottle of scotch in his glove compartment during his drinking days. And mine was outside with a bottle of vodka, half bottle of vodka in the glove compartment. There was a lady talking about going to the theatre. And the most important thing was getting to the theatre beforehand into the bar, ordering the drinks for the intermission, and then getting out at the end to get over to the pub over the road. Those two bits in the middle, the first part of the performance, and they were just an inconvenience that she was out with her husband doing those things. And I'd been in the West, I'd been at a cinema, and I was wishing the time away so I could get out and get to one of the pubs. It was an afternoon, so I heard that and a whole lot more. But as I was coming out, this guy came to me and he said, "The people in these rooms will help you as much as they possibly can." And he sort of pointed and he said, "But you've got to remember, you've got to want this." And he was just being forceful. And I sort of reared up, not physically, in my mind. Who the hell do you think you're talking to? Do you realise who I think I am? I went down to the pub, the Eagle, in Snaresbrook, and had 4 pints, and then didn't reappear in AA until 1993. But the seed was planted. Right. Without a doubt, the seed was planted, and I can identify on that occasion that I should have, or could have, that could have been that defining moment, but sadly it wasn't.
There's a few key points around AA and the famous 12 steps, the reference to higher power, the big book. This all started in America. AA started in America,
in the
came over here.
Yeah. Bill W. and Dr. Bob, the co-founders, and
both of them not revealing their surnames.
Well, everybody.
Is that a clue? Anonymity to a degree?
That was the start of it. And nowadays, everybody, if I share at a meeting, I just say, "My name's Roy, I'm an alcoholic." Yeah. Lots and lots of people know me. Lots of people know me quite well, so they know who I am, where I live, and all that and the other. But as a general, I think as a general principle in those days, it was, you keep your anonymity and you just share your experience, strength, and hope. The big book is the book that everybody sort of going through the steps, the 12 steps of AA, which you've just mentioned. They use the big book as a sort of a guide with a sponsor, and they go through those. I was very, very fortunate when I came out of Clouds, or just before I went in, or before I relapsed, because I've been sober for about 5 years and then I relapsed. Jim, my sponsor, he just kept ringing me whilst I was in this little apartment in Harlow Mill, and all he kept on saying to me is, "When you're ready, I'm here." When you're ready. And he was an ex-Glasgow street drunk, so he could see right the way through all my excuses and all the crap I would put up as reasons for. And he was very, very down to earth, basic. There was no frills.
But wise.
Very, very wise.
Yeah.
And he said to me one time, when I came out of clouds, step one is the only step you need to get 100%.
Yeah.
Powerless over alcohol. My life is unmanageable. But if I say I'm powerless over alcohol, but that but is my get out of jail card to go back drinking. Powerless over alcohol, end of story. And he said to me, are you powerless over alcohol? And I said, well, yeah, because... And I gave him a whole list of situations or reasons as to why I could see I was powerless over alcohol. And then he said, is your life unmanageable? And I said, more of the same. And I gave him another list. And he said, when you've truly got step one, you will answer that with, because I know. He said, you will know in here. You won't have to give me all these excuses. That's all I want, because I know. I don't need to qualify it. I know I'm powerless. And at that point, you have step one, and then we can build on the rest.
It's fascinating, isn't it, that as people move along and their experiences take root and gestate into greater understanding,
yeah, I mean,
you find that people speak with fewer words. The words can be very simple, but the meaning is enormous.
Yeah, I mean, there's a guy I know quite well, Frank. I think Frank's about 37 years, and he said, basically, you don't drink, you show up, and you have a common purpose. Common purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics, and that's it in a nutshell. And he shares that week in, week out, and 37 years on, he's still doing the same thing. He goes to maybe 3 or 4 meetings a week. He gets involved, and he helps other people. And the helping other people is this, keeping other people on the straight and narrow, sharing his experience, strength and hope, and there's an awful lot that goes on.
That's an amazing dedication and commitment, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
To the other. It's that's a story for people just to think about. Don't have to say anything, just let that sort of sink in.
Yeah.
It's very powerful. But may I ask you, and I don't mind if it's not an area you want to go into, but I'm interested in this thing, the higher power that the AA talks about.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you, and what did you think when you were first confronted with that?
When I was first confronted with it, I thought, God, churches, vicars, priests.
No, thank you.
No, thank you very much. No. And I could point to all kinds of things that were going around the world that made that absolutely unacceptable. But I sort of, these days, I think about my higher power is, first of all, my higher power isn't in the church. My higher power is not sitting up on a cloud playing a harp with a long white beard. My higher power is in here, for me. It's like, Wayne Dyer talks about me, when he was alive, sadly he died in 2015, going within and accessing that power. When we meditate and we go within, it's almost like making that connection. Now, somebody once said to me, there's only 2 things you need to remember. There is a higher power, and it's not you.
Yeah, no, I love that.
And of course, and as an alcoholic, when I was out there, I thought I was that higher power. If I had control, if only people would listen, if only people would do what I needed them to do, my life would be fine. And these days, I can sit and I can just reflect. And there's this inner knowing, is that when what you're about to do is right or wrong. As an alcoholic, when your behaviours, because it's not just about whether I pick a drink up. Wayne Dyer used to say the antecedent to every action is a thought. So what's your thoughts, not your actions? Because when you get to your actions, you're in the process of living them out. It's the thoughts we need to think about. And if I think my thoughts are taking me off track, I will generally speak to someone, pick a phone up, speak to somebody, go to a meeting or do whatever, just to get me back where I need to be.
I remember you spoke about Wayne Dyer at that New Scotland Yard meeting, and I went and looked him up, and there were a bunch of sayings that this particular web page threw at me that come from Wayne Dyer.
Yeah.
Change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change.
And that's it, isn't it?
I love that.
So if you're looking at something from, like you're drinking, I can't possibly do that. Well, how could I do it? You know, it's sort of take away the can't and start to think about how could I? What changes could I make that might make that path that little bit easier? And who could I speak to? Things like within AA, pick the phone up before you pick a glass up.
Nice.
And if you're thinking about having a drink, then time to pick a phone up, because someone will, as soon as you've shared it with someone, my experience is it takes the power out of it and you don't want to do it. I mean, you will get some people will say, yeah, that's fine, you have a drink, but not today, leave it till tomorrow. Eh? And of course, by the time you get to tomorrow, it's gone. And now that's gambling a little bit, but it's just a little ploy that some people use. You know, a guy rang his sponsor and said, you know what, he said, I really don't think I'm an alcoholic. And he said, that's wonderful news, that means you don't have to drink. Which shut him down completely. But going back to Wayne Dyer, the one I really love is nobody knows enough to be a pessimist.
That's deep. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, because when people say, well, that'll never work, or that's useless, that's pointless, you know, contempt prior to investigation, as it says in the big book, is we dismiss something before we've even considered it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, nobody knows enough to be a pessimist. You know, people talk about the universe, they talk about source energy, people talk about the quantum field, and there's this thing where spirituality and science is sort of coming together, is coinciding. And as time goes on, the more and more of our, I mean, even Stephen Hawking apparently, obviously he was never a confidant of mine, but he was sort of starting to think in terms of where the linkages were with the spiritual world. Right,
I didn't know that. That's interesting. Mm-hmm. Have you done any reading of his then?
Not really, no. Wayne Dyer, Andrew Huberman. Not that he's a philosopher, but that he's a very, very wise man and involved in neuroscience. Now, one of the things that interests me is that before lockdown, I retrained as a life coach and an NLP practitioner, and then I became a hypnotist and brought those together. And a lot of what we were taught on the different training courses I did was about the power of the subconscious mind.
Right.
And so
there's a big subject.
Well, exactly, and we go off on a tangent there. But the power of the subconscious mind is, I mean, I do a lot of teaching, management systems these days, and there's a fairly rigorous exam for the delegates at the end of each one, and I use a phrase that was used by Henry Ford, and I say to them, I quote Henry Ford, and he said, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're probably right. So if you go into the exam thinking, I'm not going to do this is going to be so hard, I'll never make it, and your subconscious mind believes what you tell it. It's not an intellect. It's not like prefrontal cortex, you know, with the left side and right side and all that stuff. And I'm not a neuroscientist by any stretch of the imagination, but I understand the basic principles sufficient for me to be able to explain it to people who might be coming to see me.
So, police, coaching, and business systems.
Management systems, so
management
information
systems.
Security, quality, safety, environment, business continuity, all of those things that sort of come together. So I do some consulting and some training.
And who are the typical clients?
Well, I work through training organisations.
Okay.
Sort of a big one I'm working with at the moment is Bywaters, and BSI was another one, NQA, and I teach on behalf of them. As for consultation, people will sort of get in touch with me up through my website and say, you know, can you help with this, can you help with that, and I'll go out and maybe do some short-term consultancy. And then occasionally I will go out and do maybe a 6-month contract filled for maternity leave or something, because it keeps my relevance up. So if I'm teaching a particular management system, I want the examples I'm using to be recent, not from 20 years ago. And I don't want to be talking about the same thing each time. So I need to be out there to update the relevance of my knowledge.
Yep. Can I ask you one or two things about policing? I mean, if you don't want to go there, that's
absolutely
fine.
No, fine.
Because a lot of people have said in recent times that there's sort of 2 tiers of policing according to who you are, and if you're a Christian preacher on the street, you're likely to get arrested. And that seems not particularly fair if you happen to be a Christian sympathiser or even a free speech advocate. What do you think about that?
The honest answer is if that is the case, then obviously I agree with you. It would be completely unfair. But sort of I don't see people being hounded for being Christians and sort of applauded for being Muslims and what have you. Does that? I mean, I'm in Hertfordshire, in leafy Hertfordshire. I don't get to see an awful lot of it. And the environments in which my daughter and my son-in-law operate, although we talk quite extensively about what goes on these days, that doesn't really feature. I mean, there's my daughter and my son were both brought up to be decent people, not about religion, not about which church you go to, but just to be decent people. And their mum was one of the most decent people I ever came across in my life. She was a wonderful woman. She's not with us anymore. She was, and she was such a kind, caring person. She was although I met her when she briefly stepped into the police service, her calling was nursing, and it was she'd travel 2 or 3 hours just to do somebody a good turn, and that was the way she was brought up, and to a certain extent she sort of embedded that in the children. And they would always do things. I mean, my son now, he's a carpenter, and if there's somebody I know who's sort of struggling, hasn't got any money, he'll go and do if they need a shed putting up, or they need a window fitting, or kitchen unit put in. He'll go around and do it, and he won't take anything for it. And that. So to go back to your original question, I actually don't know. Is the honest answer. I'm not currently policing in central London. Which is where I guess you may be referring to.
You see stories posted from various parts of the country, to be honest.
I think there's, with social media as a platform to people to push agendas. And when we're dealing with certain social media, there's no check on the veracity or the authenticity, so people can post what they want. At the end of the day, that's their view. Whether it's an honestly held view or whether it's a political view to further a political cause, I don't know.
No, it's very difficult.
All I know is that when I get up in the morning, I keep my side of the street clean.
Good for you, Roy. So let's return to you and family, if I may. You said that sadly your wife is no longer with us. How did that journey in marriage fare during all your difficulties and recovery?
Well, she was the one person who she knew how to handle me, if you like, and she got me sober several times with home detox. We had a really good GP when we were living over in Colindale and Mill Hill, and then we got divorced, and I went one way and she went another way. But I mean, she, because of her nursing background, she could be very, very caring. Don't get me wrong, she had a sharp tongue, and I deserved it quite a lot of the time. But at the end of the day, when you scrape away anger, fear, and all the other stuff, there was a very, very loving, kind lady there.
Right. Yeah, difficult, isn't it? Does that cause you difficulty now, or are you reconciled with how things were?
I'm sad sometimes about the way things went. I can reflect on it for a little while, and then I'll put it to one side, because there's nothing to be gained. I'm not that person now. Yeah, I'm not a rampaging drunk through people's lives, emptying bank accounts, and I'll support my family whenever I can, and my family will have the last penny I've got. And so,
is that why you're still working, incidentally? Because you want to furnish them with what you can?
I couldn't imagine retiring.
Right.
I can't. I just can't. I mean, the things I like to do, I can do. I love going to the gym. I love spending time with the family. I get to AA meetings. I mix with friends. And my work it's not onerous. It's not like I'm climbing up scaffold or anything of that nature. And I can choose to work or not work. So if
what's not to like?
Yeah, Bywaters ring me up, say, can you do a course in, I don't know, Belfast or Glasgow? I'll say, yeah, I'll go off. I'll do it for a week. They'll book my flight. They'll book my hotel. All I've got to do is turn up with the manuals, teach the course, and come away. I get put up in a nice hotel, and the delegates on the course are generally very nice people and are interested to learn from my experience and sort of, you sort of over the years, because I've been doing this now since about 2013.
All right.
Over the years, you sort of meet people who remain friends as well.
So is it the whole of your CV that attracts these clients who want to hire you for courses?
I think it's the CV around management systems.
Right.
Is because I've sort of worked with, I've had the pleasure of working with the, law firms in the city. I've been head of safety at Canary Wharf. I was force safety advisor to the Transport Police during the London bombings. I've worked with the NHS. So I've got quite a broad CV in terms of the organisation. So
the London bombings being the IRA?
No, the 7/7.
Oh, the 7/7. Okay.
Yeah, I was out, and they wanted a safety advisor, a force safety advisor, and the BTP being a national. When I say national, England, Wales, and Scotland. So I had that remit.
Yeah.
And a month or so in, 2 months in, we had the 7/7 bombings, and that was quite a. I desperately wanted to have a uniform on, and to be back doing what I really wanted to do, but I couldn't. So I could support from where I was at, but maybe having more of an insight into what was needed.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sure.
Yeah, and I had my daughter who was on outside. I think it was Edgware Road, and she was in contact with me. My son-in-law was in contact with me, and we just sort of, not that I needed supporting, but they were sort of more in the thick of it than me. But that was sort of one of those occasions when I was so grateful for the background I had.
Mm-hmm.
So grateful for the background I had, and then sort of the aftermath of that, and then the lessons learned and what have you. Interesting times.
So you're obviously in good shape. You're balanced, you're active, you're sort of multidimensional. Just to sort of begin to close up, tell me about your feelings around the AA and how things matured for you once you were with them and settled.
AA's been an interesting journey. There have been times when I haven't wanted to go, and times when I really think, this is what the rest of my life's going to be like. And I've never been to a meeting and come away feeling worse than when I went in. And there have been lots of times when I've been full of self-pity and poor me, and I go to a meeting and I come out with a smile on my face and think, there was a reason why I was there tonight. And you just listen to other people and you become humble again, and you start to listen to young people coming in, telling their story about, and they might be a month in or 2 months in, and listen to the hope and the expectation they've got. And when people say, well, why do you still go? Well, I still go because when I walk through the doors, there were people there to sort of sit me down, give me a cup of tea and have a chat with me. And if people, as they get to, Frank, the friend I alluded to, 37 years, him and his friend Colin, who's about 42 years now, they go 3-4 times a week. But for the same reason, that if people don't keep on going, then who's there for the newcomer that comes through the door?
Right.
It's an absolute lifeline for a lot of people who've got nothing else. They might have lost everything else. They might be just out of prison, might have other addictions. There might be all sorts of horrible things, but they can generally go to a meeting and find somebody in there that they can identify with. And if it doesn't happen in that meeting, there are so many meetings in London and the home counties. There's a thing on like the Where to Find, and you can find meetings anywhere in any part of the country. I've been to a meeting in Moscow, in Madrid, in Barcelona. I found meetings in Singapore. So these meetings, and I'm not last summer, gone summer before, I was on holiday with a good mate of mine, and I went to meetings in Malibu, places like that, and up the the coast in California, and you are made welcome wherever you go.
So do you think the AA environment can really work for people of all backgrounds?
Yes.
Because we have so many now, don't we?
Well, the thing is, if you go to an AA meeting and look around, and you will see people of different religions, different cultures, different nationalities, but there's the common purpose of staying sober and helping other alcoholics to achieve sobriety.
As many women as men, or more?
There's probably more men than women, but you find that proportion is now increasing because there's no
proportion of women is increasing.
Proportion of women is going up. I mean, there may be at one time there'd either be no women or maybe one or two in a room full of 20 or 30 people. But now you can go to meetings and it might be 50-50. You might go to some meetings and it might be more. There's no hard and fast rule, but I think the thing today is women are just as likely to seek help as men, and there are some very, very strong women in the fellowship, very strong recovery, and there's a really good network of support for them. And as a general principle, it's not 100%, and it's not written down in sort of regulations or anything, because there aren't any regulations, but generally men for men, women for women, keeps it nice and simple.
I love the word fellowship, by the way.
Yes.
Because you've used it a few times.
Well, yeah, it's that thing, isn't it? You know, Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism.
I mean, it suggests a tremendous and very real bond. Is that what you feel? Am I right?
I mean, the thing is, as I've said, I went to a meeting in San Francisco on a Saturday morning back in 2014, and walked in, and it was just sort of, you go down, it's like a sub-basement, and the whole of this office block was just opened up, and there had to be 60, 70 people in there, and they were arriving with sandwiches, with cakes, with all sorts of, like a huge, like a wedding buffet. And one of the most powerful parts of it, they do is sort of a countdown, if you like. So they'll say, anybody 40 years plus stand up, and 2 or 3 people stood up. Anybody 30 to 40, and maybe another 6 or 8 stood up. And when you were getting sort of 20 to 30, you might be getting 20 people standing up. And the sobriety went right the way down to some people who were there for the very first meeting in the first 24 hours.
Wow.
And the inclusivity of it. And it's there in every meeting. I mean, you don't, not every meeting you go to, that's quite unusual to be that size. And then throw into the mix things like conventions. So you can have conventions which run for a day. Maybe I went to one in October in Hitchin, but I'm going to one in Gloucestershire. But there are conventions for 3 or 4 days in Spain, in Cyprus, out in India. There are conventions all around the world that people go to. And the same thing, it's just people with the same issues getting together, and there's an awful lot of laughter, there's music, there's dancing, you know, and it is a wonderful, wonderful fellowship.
So just finally, how would you encourage people to use AA as a means of breaking free?
I suppose the first thing is to, the telephone service is a very good way to start, because there's the AA telephone service is manned by alcoholics, right. And you will always get someone on the other end of the phone who...
A human, not a bot.
No, you get a human who sits there. Everything's on divert to people's homes, and people will be in a meeting and will say, you normally turn phones off, put them on silent. Someone will say, do you mind if I keep my phone on? I'm manning the phones tonight. And so that's one. But the other thing is just go. Everybody knows how to use the internet these days. Find your nearest meeting and walk through the door and just sit down and listen. Someone will come and sit with you and greet you and ask you if it's your first time. And interestingly enough, it's a step meeting. Each week you go through a different step.
Of the 12?
Yes.
Yeah.
If a newcomer comes into the room, they defer to step 1 again.
Oh, really?
And the newcomer becomes the most important person in the room at that time. And they are often phone numbers with people. We'll give them phone numbers, invite them for coffee, and the bond starts to building trust. It's helping, getting them to ask for help. And honesty is the big thing. You know, alcoholics are not the most honest people in the world.
Sure, because they'll steal from their own, won't they, to feed the habit?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like
but even, you know, talk about feelings. You know, somebody says, well, how are you feeling today? If you're going to be really honest, if you're having a bad day, to say to someone, well, as you asked, I'm feeling pretty crap, and this is what happened, blah, blah, blah. Get it off your chest, and that can make such a difference to someone's day. You don't have to cure the problem, you just listen to it. and it's just getting that initial trust, getting through the door, and then just going with the flow. Yeah, and don't worry about 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Just worry about 24 hours. And nothing to be ashamed about with alcoholism. It's an illness. It's a severe illness.
But getting to that understanding isn't easy, is it?
No, but you reach the understanding by... There's a reason why people start to pick the phone up or get to an AA meeting. You don't just suddenly think, do you know what, could do with an AA meeting. I've never been to one before. You go there because quite often you're on your knees. Quite often people coming into AA are on bail. Not all the time. Or might be looking at divorce, might be looking at losing a job, might be financially... There could be many, many reasons, none of which are generally pleasant. It's like someone who has, who stopped going to meetings. Very rarely does somebody come back through the doors into an AA meeting and say, do you know what, I haven't been here for 2 years. It's life's fantastic, but I just thought I'd pop in. I've heard people say, and you hear it a lot, I didn't come into AA in case I saw somebody in there I knew. And they say, well, why do you think that person was in AA, the one that you knew? They weren't there just to deliver cakes. You know? There's nobody judging. There's no shame. In actual fact, there's only got to be, credit. People who are able to embrace it and say, I need help. And that's all you need to... You don't even need to say, I need help. Just present yourself at a meeting and you sort of say, I think I've got a problem. And they'll sit you down and listen. And that's it. It's the thin end of the wedge. Get it in there and start to open that door properly and just sample the delights that are there within the rooms.
Yeah. Wise man. Good. I think we're cooked.
Okay.
Feels rounded to me. Would there be anything that you would have added?
No, I don't think. Thank you for the way you've conducted it. It's been really, really considerate and sensitive.
Then I should.
I make contact with my higher power, or try to. I don't recite prayers, but I do like a few of them, and that is one. Mm-hmm. That step 11 prayer just sums everything up for me.
Nice. You a churchgoer?
No.
Don't need it.
I'm out the habit of going. Having said that, I live in a village where there is a lovely church, and one of the things I've been suggested I go is there's a double VC winner buried in the churchyard.
Double?
A double VC winner. But the church itself is lovely. So, I will go to cathedrals, I will look at churches and what have you. It's the formal side of religion. But then again, there's an awful lot of goodness within people who live and work within the church environment as well. Sure. Again, going back to Wayne Dyer, nobody knows enough to be a pessimist.
That's a great line. I'm sure I will use that.
Okay. And then she got this rampant idiot running around in her life, getting drunk and making all kinds of ridiculous decisions. If you don't take the first drink, you can't get drunk. My dad was very much of the ilk that you didn't go into a pub unless you could buy a drink yourself.
Thank you so much for joining me for this conversation.
It's been a pleasure, and thank you for asking me.
I hope it's useful to everybody. Okay. Take care.
Thank you.
Sabbath means the world to me.
We sent it to the Church of England already with the ordination of women.
Thank you so much.